We want to go back to that attack that killed 27 civilians in Afghanistan. For more on this continuing problem, we are joined by Alex Thier. He's Director for Afghanistan and Pakistan at the United States Institute of Peace. That's an independent, nonpartisan research institution funded by Congress, and he joins us from Washington. Welcome back.
Pleasure to be here.
Today marks the third time that a coalition airstrike has resulted in civilian casualties in just the last week or so. Why are we seeing so many civilian deaths? Or maybe let me put it a different way. Are we really seeing many civilian deaths compared to, say, other conflicts in recent times?
I think for an operation of this scale, the number of civilian deaths is not wildly out of proportion with what you would normally see. The problem in this case is that the issue of civilian casualties has been a very high-profile issue in Afghanistan for at least the last 4 or 5 years. And every new incident raises this issue at the highest levels. And so it's not that this is a new issue or that the number of casualties in Marja has been anything near extraordinary. It's really that this is already such a sensitive issue that the NATO forces simply can't afford to be making mistakes that cause large numbers of civilian casualties, given all the history.
Well, the loss of any civilian, of course, is regrettable. Is it a problem of intelligence gathering?
Well, it's either a problem of intelligence in that the intelligence that they have from human sources or from signals or for observation with drones was faulty, and they thought that a target was a civilian, didn't have civilians in it when it did. But often the result is what the military refers to as troops in contact. And that is simply that they don't have the time to gather intelligence to make good decisions. They're under fire, and they do the best that they can, and sometimes they make mistakes of flash judgment. And that's really where the most casualties come from.
How do you continue then to win the hearts and minds, as the line goes, when you are killing civilians? What is the damage it has on the civilian psyche?
Well, it has an enormous impact. The Afghans have been suffering from these sorts of casualties, both from the international forces and from the insurgents for years now, and they're fed up with it. Our ability to maintain legitimacy in Afghanistan relies on showing the civilians that we're not making these types of errors, that we're hearing their concerns, and that their greater enemy is really the insurgents. And so it's really quite important for the overall success of the operation that we avoid these accidents to the extent possible.
And quickly, when these accidents do occur, do you think the Afghan people realize it was in fact an accident?
Well, this is one of the big changes that NATO has tried to make. They have been very aggressive in acknowledging the mistake, in saying sorry, and in providing compensation. And all of these things are things that unfortunately NATO hasn't done in previous years, which tended to cause people to apportion a greater amount of blame and not trust that they were doing as much as they could to avoid these situations.
Alex Thier, thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure.